There are some things on my channel that just follow a form of national progression, whether it be ranking all the gym leaders generation by generation, or making a ton of best teams. Well, today, the national progression of things has led me to follow up my top 10 strongest series with a new entry, the top 10 weakest. And trust me, my milk tank is ready to go, because I have a lot of milk in store for this year, so be prepared for it. If you guys remember from that previous series, it was all about figuring out what the best Pokemon was by way of its merit in competitive battles. Well, naturally, we're going to be using that sort of formula here, albeit in the opposite way. The better a Pokemon is, the closer to the 10 spot it will be. Whatever Pokemon ends up coming in at number 1 is going to be what I consider to be the weakest Pokemon of our topic in question. And this time around, we're starting things off with the fire typing. As a refresher, the top 10 strongest saw us deduce that Blaziken was the best of the typing, and Chandelure was the cutoff point at number 10. I'll link to the top 10 strongest in the iCard above, so you guys can go check it out. But essentially, if it didn't make that list, there's a chance you'll see it here today on the weakest list. So, I think it's about time to get into this. But already, I'd like to ask you guys to go down in the comments and let me know what typing you'd like to see me cover next time. So, we're starting off by the nature of the list. The best Pokemon we'll be hearing about today, Magmortar. I think it just goes without saying, everybody just prefers Magmar over Magmortar. I know I do. And that's why before we even talk about Magmortar, I'd like to mention that I feel Magmar with an Eviolite is even better than it, in my opinion. I'd much rather use that than Magmortar, which just feels like a real disappointment of a Pokemon. That being said though, it is in fact the best Pokemon we've got, which is why it opens this one up. It's got 125 base special attack, which is really good, and a surely respectable 95 base special defense. Now, where it's suffering of course, is at the speed stat, which hit only 84 base. And of course, its defense is lagging way behind everything else at base 67. There's pretty much nothing that will keep Magmortar from being crushed by an Earthquake or Rock Slide. And of course, any physical water move will probably be its undoing as well. Its abilities are both a bit useless, as Flame Body won't be a deterrent to physical attacks that can hit for super effective damage, as moves like the aforementioned Earthquake and Rock Slide aren't contact moves. And Vital Spirit is just stupid to run with. Now, we've talked a lot of bad about Magmortar, but it still ended up coming in the 10th spot here, so it's gotta be better than the rest. And where it makes up for a lot of its shortcomings is in the move pool it has. There's a ton of coverage available to Magmortar, starting with its own stab moves like Flamethrower or Mystical Fire, and then a move like Solar Beam, that can be partnered with Sunny Day to provide it with the powerful move that can be used against its true weaknesses for super effective damage. There's also Psychic, Thunderbolt, and Scorching Sands, which can be used to easily cover other typings that fire traditionally doesn't cause super effective damage to, like Poison, Fighting, or Flying. I didn't really acknowledge it all that much when going over stats, but while Magmortar has 125 base special attack, it also has a pretty decent 95 base physical attack. So if you want to run some physical moves, there are plenty of those too. There's Earthquake, Mach Punch, and Rock Slide to name a few options, as well as Belly Drum if you're feeling super brave. There is a lot to say about Magmortar because it's the best Pokemon we'll be discussing today, but I know some of you guys might not agree entirely with that. So take a moment to let me know down below if there is a Pokemon worse than Magmortar that should have taken this spot. So this is where the controversy might start up, as the next weakest Pokemon we have is actually a starter Pokemon, and it's Delphox from X and Y. Some of you may have thought that I was gonna pick Emboar, but you're wrong. Emboar is actually pretty damn good, regardless of if I hate Pignite. Now, I can see why some of you might find this to be better than Magmortar. It has a secondary typing being Psychic, and its special stats are pretty good, with base 114 special attack, 100 special defense, and 1 to 4 speed supporting them. Starting off, its abilities aren't good at all. Nobody likes Blaze, Overgrow, or Torrent, so as a starter, it already has that working against it. And then Magician? Why would that ever be useful in a competitive sense? Your Delphox should already be holding an item, so there won't be any room to steal one. That's just the start of what works against Delphox. And the other big thing is how much it gets ruined by Stealth Rocks and the extra typings it is weak to due to that Psychic typing. It's going to be totally rocked by a Pokemon like Weavile using Pursuit, and the plethora of other Pokemon that have access to Sucker Punch. Now, despite the few things working so much against Delphox, there are still ways to take advantage of its good special stats and speed, like using Calm Mind for example. While it becomes even stronger, it'll be able to call upon a move like Mystical Fire that of course has the potential to improve its special attack even more. It actually learns Shadow Ball via Move Relearner, which is pretty cool, and of course it learns Psychic as another good stat move. Though, when we look at it, we see Dazzling Gleam and Grassland as TMs it can learn, and Shockwave is a tutor move, which you would think rounds out the coverage really nicely. But honestly, I don't think that it's any better than the coverage you get from Magmortar. That's what sort of made the difference here. Delphox having that Psychic typing, which left it susceptible to more super effective moves and its less interesting move pool. Now, that being said, it is still better than the next 8 Pokemon that we're about to talk about, but just not better than Magmortar. As we continue to go deeper into the depth of bad fire types, we stay in Kalos, for the unfortunate case of Pyroar. Look, it's got one really great thing going for it, and that's the Moxie ability. Or rather, I'd like to say that's a good thing, except Pyroar has garbage 68 base physical attack, so Moxie isn't really doing much. Rivalry and Unnerve are borderline useless on Pyroar, so they're nothing to write home about either, giving us another Pokemon that has abilities we can just write off as nothing special. Well, it's a bit special, with 109 special attack and 106 speed, which is most certainly the most redeemable thing about Pyroar. Unfortunately though, things come crashing way back down to earth when you realize that Pyroar carries the normal typing alongside its fire typing, making it a real target for the many great fighting type moves that some of the best Pokemon carry, like Focus Blast and Close Combat, among others. It has such poor defenses, 66 special and 72 physical. It would probably get one shot by a Mach Punch from a Pokemon that has great physical attack. Well, at the very least, Pyroar isn't affected by any ghost type attacks, so I guess that's a good thing, right? So, as for the move pool that Pyroar has, it's unfortunate to note that it doesn't really have anything in the way of setup. I suppose there is workup, but is that really all that great when it comes to setting up? I don't really think so. In fact, I hardly even count it. As for attacking moves, there are the usual fire type moves that you're used to seeing, like Flamethrower and Fire Blast, but probably one of the more important moves is Hyper Voice, which is 90 base power and is a normal type move. So, with Stab, its power shoots up to 135. And did I mention, it's the only special normal type move that Pyroar gets? A move like Hyper Voice suddenly becomes really important, because it's the only stab option for a Pokemon. It's really not what you want. Well, alright, that wasn't entirely true, as Echoed Voice is an option on Pyroar too, but it isn't anywhere nearly as viable as Hyper Voice in my opinion, so we may as well ignore it. As for coverage, there is so very little, except for something like Solar Beam, which I suppose you could run with the Grass Z Crystal for a defense against water types. All in all, Pyroar is better than the next few Pokemon we're going to be talking about, but as you can tell, it's going to be a real sharp decline from here. I really have no interest in spending too long talking about the Pokemon coming in at number 7, as it's something really none of us like. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, Japan had a popularity poll for Pokemon, and this thing came in last place. I'm sure you guys know about the Pokemon I'm talking about, that Pokemon being Simisear. And I gotta say that it's very lucky it isn't the worst of its typing, because if it was, that would make being the least popular Pokemon even worse. Simisear has atrocious defenses, 63 in both, and bad HP at base 75, which just means it couldn't take a hit to save its life. Now, that being said, it is fast at 101 base speed, and has 98 base special attack. But the reality is that Simisear is probably just going to get a single hit in, and then be taken out if it doesn't manage to one-hit the opposing Pokemon. It does have Nasty Plot, but that doesn't really help it at all, since it's not able to take any hits. It can't set up, and thus its Flamethrower will only hit for good damage and not amazing damage like it could have. So, even with the poor defenses, it at least can be a competent special attacker against Pokemon that are weak to fire, or at least don't resist it. For coverage moves, it does have Grass Knot and Focus Blast that provide a very little bit of coverage, and in some cases, I can at least say that's more than the next few provide. Alright, so we finally got a Pokemon that has some good abilities. Next, we're talking about Torkel, which has access to Drought, White Smoke, and Shell Armor. The latter of the three is the worst of the group, which just protects Torkel from critical hits. I personally like White Smoke more, as it prevents opposing Pokemon from lowering its stats at all. But those two abilities might as well be ignored, as Drought takes the honors of being the whole reason Torkel is any good. The potential for it on Sun teams is what allows it to maintain some usage, but even then, there are plenty of Pokemon that do its job a bit better. Its stats show off a great base defense that clocks up at base 140, but its HP is literally half that, which doesn't lend itself to being very bulky. Its speed is horrendous at base 20, which essentially makes it useless outside of its Drought ability, though maybe I'm being a little too hard on Torkel. See, its move pool does feature the move Curse, which would bring up its defense and attack at the cost of its speed. And since there's no hope in fixing that speed, it doesn't really matter. Now, both of its attack stats are base 85, so you can do great special damage with moves like Lava Plume and Flamethrower, and it has access to Stealth Rocks, which you should be able to set up more than likely. It can use Earthquake, Rock Slide, and Gyro Ball if you feel like going at things from a purely physical standpoint too. The issue here though is, how in the world is it going to take special moves? Well, as we know, the Sun being set up, thanks to Drought, pretty much kills the power of Water-type moves. So Torkel can take plenty of Liquidations or Scalds without a lot of issue, depending on what is attacking it. However, its ability to take a move like Earth Power is what brings things into question here. Fundamentally, Torkel has nothing it can do about special attackers, and thus it has a ceiling that is so low. I'll say this much, if you think Torkel should be higher than Simisear, I completely understand. That's an incredibly valid opinion to have. Torkel is going to set the Sun up, which is great, but unfortunately, the Pokemon that have come before it bring more to the table than just hopes and dreams that things can go well, even if just a little bit more. Alright, time to start off the top 5 weakest Fire-type Pokemon. And I start off with Camerupt. This camel is the face of wasted potential on this list, as despite being able to Mega Evolve, it just still sits at the bottom of the barrel for the Fire typing. The stats on it prior to Mega Evolving show us 100 base attack and 105 base special attack, making it out to be a nice and strong Pokemon. Now, if that's all that mattered, we wouldn't be talking about Camerupt right now. Unfortunately, for it, the lackluster defenses and HP stat mean it isn't taking any Water-type move, and an Earthquake aimed squarely at it will probably knock it out. Now, it gets much better when it Mega Evolves, as it receives a boost to the attack stats that makes the special side stand out at 145, while the physical one goes up to 120. Its defenses even get better, but that speed, well, it goes from 40 to 20, giving it a very similar problem to Torkel. Plus, if Camerupt actually makes its way back to Pokemon with the reintroduction in the next installment of Gen 8, well, it won't be Mega Evolving more than likely. We may as well not even focus all that much on the Mega. Instead, take it for what we know we'll see again, its basic form. However, if we are talking about the Mega form, Sheer Force in Mega Camerupt with Trick Room is incredibly good. But we're talking about the base form here, so base form Camerupt is pretty much trash in comparison to its Mega. Camerupt's move pool is exactly what you'd expect to see. Earthquake, Lava Plume, you know, all the greatest hits that a Pokemon with a fire and ground typing would have. It's exactly what you'd expect to find. And if you can somehow take a single water type move, I'm sure it's gonna go really well for you using Camerupt. Except it probably won't. In the case of Camerupt and its Gen 3 counterpart Torkel, their massive issues with speed are the things that leave them outclassed by dozens of other Pokemon on their typing. Not counting Mega Camerupt with Sheer Force and Trick Room though. Just base form Camerupt, remember that. Just because it's on this weakest list doesn't exactly mean it can't be used for something. The moves in its pool are still strong, and there is a little bit of coverage with the aforementioned Rock Slide. There just isn't much of a point in ever using Camerupt when there are plenty of other Pokemon that are fire types that can use fire moves and something like Earthquake to varying levels of more success. Next up, we've got Rapidash checking in here. I really don't want it to be one of the worst fire types, but unfortunately, it doesn't matter too terribly what I want in that regard, as it just sort of is. The best thing that could have happened to it was getting that Galarian form. but since that is pretty much a different Pokemon, we won't be talking about it today obviously. Rapidash was right there with Arcanine as one of the first true physical attacking fire types, but naturally, Arcanine was much better. Rapidash has 105 speed and 100 attack, and the Flash Fire ability as well as Flame Body, meaning that fire type moves can be completely useless against it, or Pokemon can be burned just by touching it. I would think really that Flame Body is the better of the two, but really, who cares? Nobody is using Rapidash in its Cantonian form. Let's be honest here. There's just no reason to when its Galarian form is much better, and when there are in general so many better fire types. Being a physical attacker, all Rapidash can really turn to for physical fire moves is Flame Wheel and Flare Blitz, and neither of those are what you want. I know that people normally just deal with Flare Blitz as the fire type option on their Pokemon, but there is absolutely no reliable way for Rapidash to recover. So I hate that it's stuck with this. Its coverage moves include Wild Charge, which is yet another move that will hurt it, and a slew of moves that lack great accuracy, like Mega Horn, Play Rough, and High Horsepower. Now, one small good note for Rapidash is the fact that it can get Swords Dance, which would make it hit harder with a move like Flame Wheel, if you chose to go with that over Flare Blitz. Though, why bother when Rapidash isn't bulky and probably could barely take a big hit from anything that's even a bit strong? This unicorn simply isn't good when it's a fire type, and really it isn't much better with the Galarian form, but at least it wasn't ranked the worst. The third weakest fire Pokemon is Heatmore, and boy does it suck. Does anyone actually like Heatmore at all? I mean, I don't mind its design, and I can't really comprehend anyone saying it's their favorite Pokemon. It has pretty decent offensive stats, but that's it. Just look on screen right now at how awful its defenses and speed are. It can do little to nothing at all. Flash Fire and White Smoke are fine abilities, but quite frankly, I can only imagine using a Heatmore in any way just to switch in randomly to a fire type move. Could you imagine being so bad that you're only useful for your ability and nothing else? It's just sad. Honestly, Heatmore should be the weakest fire type Pokemon, and yet it finds itself here as the third weakest. At the very least, Heatmore has access to a great move in Fire Lash. It used to be its signature move up until the 8th generation, so the one particularly good thing about it isn't even exclusive to it anymore. Its coverage moves are nothing too spectacular. However, there are a few moves that can be used for recovery, being Giga Drain and Drain Punch. I guess that is nice and all, but when a Pokemon is probably going to be hit and it's going to be outsped by most Pokemon, who cares if you can recover? Heatmore is such trash, with a little bit of coverage in its corner, but minus the defenses or speed that it would need to take advantage of any of that. I will echo what I said earlier in this entry. I have no idea how anybody could ever like Heatmore, especially when you compare it to its mortal enemy, Durant, which is a significantly better Pokemon. Anyway, what could possibly have been worse than this Pokemon I just spent a few minutes dunking on? Let's take a look. Alright, it's time for the penultimate Pokemon on this list, and it is in fact a bit of a cop-out. Alright, I don't really think it is, but I know it might be what crosses your mind when I let you know that it is Oricorio using Bile Style. The fact is this. Oricorio needs to be ranked here because its fire form is just awful as a fire type. It isn't like it's some special form that Oricorio transforms into during battle. It's something that's just entering and already existing. Also, quite frankly, this is the worst form of the group in my opinion. It's awful defensively, just like the PAL form, and it can barely do anything offensively with just one fire type move being Revelation Dance. It's the signature move on Oricorio, and it matches the typing that it is. But boy, is it just unable to do anything. Hurricane is a great move, and Revelation Dance at least is base 90 power, so it gets stat boosted to 135, making it somewhat strong. All of that just doesn't matter though, as beyond the base 98 special attack and 93 speed, Oricorio has garbage bulk, and it'll get destroyed when switching in on Stealth Rocks. I don't have anything else to say other than its ability sucks, its good stats are useless, its move pool is garbage, and it is practically the worst fire type. Except, you know, it isn't. This next Pokemon is. Could you imagine the only good thing about your existence being that you have access to recover? That's the reality that Magcargo wakes up to every time someone boots up a Pokemon game, watches a Pokemon YouTube video, or even brings up the franchise at all. It's one of the worst Pokemon of all time. And no doubt, we're giving it the dunce cap today as the weakest Pokemon of the fire typing. Its defense is great, being base 120, and 90 base special attack is usually a great start to build off of. The problem? That would be the base 30 speed and 60 HP that completely eliminate any chance Magcargo has to take a hit and then hit back. What's worse is its typing in general, which leaves it times 4 weak to water and ground, as well as to wick the Stealth Rocks and just about every other entry hazard. Its abilities are flat out useless on a Pokemon like this, so that isn't even a redeemable quality. Like I mentioned a moment ago, the only notable thing about Magcargo is the fact that it has access to recover. And that's truly it. Why bother using any of the offensive moves it has access to when the odds are heavily in the favor of it getting absolutely rocked? You're better off sitting around with Recover, Stealth Rocks, and Toxic, and just counting your blessings if Magcargo even lasts one turn. Again, it's just wild to me that there can be Pokemon that are as bad as this just sitting around, because usually even some of the worst Pokemon can find some sort of niche to fit into, but not Magcargo. I feel like I'm just getting too negative at this point, so I'm just going to wrap up this list with this. Magcargo is the worst Fire-type Pokemon. It's also probably going to be the worst Rock-type Pokemon. And if I ever get around to the top 10 worst Pokemon, it'll be challenging for the top spot on that. For as much as I love Johto, and I call it my home, I can't believe this stupid piece of crap is even from there. Alright, that's going to do it for this debut of the Top 10 Weakest series. That was an awful lot of negativity, but I couldn't help it. The worst Pokemon of this fire typing are just so very bad, especially Magcargo. Let me know down in the comments below which typing you'd like to see me do next. And also, leave a like if you enjoyed it. I look forward to future entries in this series, I'm pretty sure. So with that said, thank you to everyone for watching the video. Huge thanks to my phenomenal team and the amazing art done each week by Danny the Demon. I couldn't do all this without them. If you all enjoyed the video and want to see more content like this, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Be sure to leave a comment too, as it really helps us out. I also do other content on my Twitch, where I stream Genshin Impact, Mystic Zora, where I do Pokemon Let's Plays and other gaming content, and of course MysticSage, where I do all anime content. Right now, I'm focusing on Inuyasha and Yashahime, so if you're interested in that, be sure to check it out. If you'd like to support me even further than that, check out my Patreon. Whether it's a $1 tip to get early thumbnail access, or the $10 tier to get cool perler bead charms and a shoutout. There's tons of reasons to join today. These lovely people did, and I thank them all so much for their support. It really means the world to me. I think I'm gonna wrap this up though. I'm Mr. Gumbrion, and I will see you all next time with some more amazing Pokemon content.